Oh, thank you. I did get to see part of this. I can't wait to catch up. While Vice Chair Belknap and myself were absent for a portion of your meeting, we were working with Superintendent Coleman and staff to react to a concern that was brought before us in our meeting. And so we have an awesome team, and we're prepared to give clear direction in form of motion regarding that particular concern of remote learning that was brought to our attention a few hours ago. So I know time is important, but first of all, just again want to thank the background on this. As you know, that the governor's office had released that letter. This is all surrounded around guidance that's around House Bill HB 1007, where it talked about remote learning and conditions of and how conditions will be set for that to happen. That letter went out last night, and we do have situations with Utah School for the Deaf and Blind that require us to react and prepare and do what's best for our students for the schools of deaf and blind. So we've prepared. There's actually three motions here to mitigate that. We haven't had a lot of time to get into discussion, push into a committee. This is an emergency meeting. And so I think what we'll just start off with before we get into this meeting is the very first motion. Vice Chair Belknap, are you ready to make that motion, please?
I am, Chair. I move that the board approve this emergency meeting under Utah Code 52-4-202 to consider action relating to USDB.
Okay, do we have somebody driving this that can put motions up on? So can everyone see those, or do you have?
I think they can, plus they are also on Civic Clerk under the emergency meeting. All three motions are there. But if someone could post it, it might help those because it's kind of hard to toggle.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
Second, Board Member Booth.
Does the maker of the motion want to speak to the motion?
I do not.
Okay, the first motion before the board is that the board approve this emergency meeting under Utah Code 52-4-202 to consider action related to Utah Schools for the Deaf and Blind. Any discussion to the motion? My screen needs to change so I can see none. Please vote. The voting is complete and the motion carries unanimously.
So Chair, do you want me to make motion two?
Yeah, will you make the second motion?
I will. I move that the board instruct USDB to follow the decision of the local school district when the local school district school where USDB students are located transitions to an in-person to remote learning. Boy, that didn't sound right, did it?
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, do you want to speak to the motion?
I do. For clarity on this one, this is when the USDB has a room inside of a school and that district goes remote, that they need to go remote as well. That would be this second motion. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Discussion to the motion, Member Hanson.
Now, Laura helped to clarify this, but I was thinking about the feeder schools where USDB is operating in, and there may be multiple districts that they interface with. And so I didn't know how that would affect USDB campus operations, but it sounds like this is we're just talking about their operations on school, in school grounds, on school campuses.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. Motion two. Yep.
Yes.
So USDB would not be going remote just because the schools around them are going remote.
Yeah, it's
Separate
strictly the students that are embedded in that local district or that, yeah,
Classroom.
the LEA, should say the LEA. There's motion 3 addresses the Utah Schools for Deaf and Blind 3 campuses, which is Ogden, Salt Lake, and Springville. So
Okay, I hadn't read ahead. Thank you. That helps
hey,
me.
that's right. Sorry, I knew you didn't. So this is coming as a surprise. So motion 2 is again, I'll state the motion again. Let's see if there's any other discussion. Motion number 2 is that that the board instruct USDB to follow the decision of a local school district when the local district school where USDB students are located transitions from in-person to remote learning.
Sorry, Chair, one more question. Is this
Okay.
time bound? Are we authorizing them this way for ever or for 6 months or for the rest of this year?
It's the term that, well, it's the time that the local district is out.
So Chair, could we add that the emergency delegation of this authority shall end on January 28th?
Without objection to the person that made the second. Can
No
our driver edit?
I
Or I
apologize.
don't need
This
to
is,
edit.
I'm kind of-
I've got it. So without objection, the motion would read, I move that the board instruct USDB to follow decision of the local school district when the local district school where USDB students are located transitions from in-person to remote learning. This emergency delegation of authority shall end, no, this emergency, not delegation of authority, this emergency shall end January 28th. Okay, more questions on this motion. Member Hanson, your hand is still raised.
Oh, sorry, I thought I took it down. Nope, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, Member Lear.
I wonder if it goes without saying, or I wonder, it doesn't necessarily need to be part of the motion, but I think the USDB would need to be very sure that they independently notify their parents of that information. And again, I'm not trying to do their job for them, but I think that'd be really crucial, especially for these children. And then as to the date, couldn't we just say that it ends when the when the waiver ends, or when the governor says so, or something like that, so that we could allow that to continue until that permission goes away from whoever gives it.
Well, the challenge, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe Superintendent Dix can weigh in on this on the letter. I believe that January 28th is, if things are extended past that, then we'll be we'll be restating additional motions.
I don't have strong feelings about that part. It just seemed an easier way to deal with it, to not have to. I suspect this is going to go on for a couple more 2-week cycles, and I just thought we could leave it open-ended. But I'm more concerned about making sure that, and probably they're very conscientious, but these parents need to be crystal clear, and it could vary from school to school.
So
wrong button. We have to notify them anyway because we transport them to school and home every day.
Great. If you transport every one of them, great. I'm just saying, I've been that working mom who didn't get the memo about school being closed. And my child didn't have disabilities, so I just think that's a really important communication concern.
Vice Chair Davis,
The motion doesn't appear specific to the pandemic or COVID. And if there's a snow day on January 29th, then are we trying to scramble for an emergency reconvening? I mean, I would think it would be wiser to leave the date off and allow for the flexibility and see how it goes through this winter and then reevaluate after that.
so the maker of the, let's weigh into it. Let's see what our, Brian, is it okay to have that date off? I just don't want to come back and do this again next week.
Or the next.
AAG Quisenberry,
Chair, I think the intent of that, adding that January 28th date was as a sunset. And so you're asking if a motion two, if we omit it, but if that's going to be what, legal, or is that what you're asking?
well, the question is for this situation, is the date relevant?
The January 28th date, it's relevant only to the extent it coincides with the governor's letter. It comes out of the governor's letter.
So it's in
Right,
alignment
yeah.
with the governor's letter.
So in that sense, maybe it's not critical to be in there because the governor's letter terminates or sunsets there on that date.
I don't have passion either way, Chair.
Yeah, I think we're fine either way. So you're the maker of the motion, Vice Chair Belknap, date on or date off?
So would my second be okay if we just take that last sentence off?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right, so it's just going to be where it's back where it's at.
Excuse-
So the motion, I'll restate what we're considering here, and that is with that date off. Member Hanson,
I'm sorry, I'll have to chime back in, but if we have an emergency authorization that we're doing now, somehow that's got to end, or else it continues until we go back and try to fix it. And that puts it on us to go back and revoke that emergency authority. So I don't care if it's the 28th or if it's the end of this school year, somehow this needs to sunset. I think it's irresponsible to just give an open-ended motion that says that they should do this unless we want to change policy. And if so, then we should change the policy somehow.
So you're making a
I don't think
motion?
it's-
I'm
you want
just-
to amend it to add?
I already tried to amend it and you pulled it back out. So I can try again to amend it. Or I can tell you that I can't
think-
vote for it this way.
Mr.
I don't
Chair,
think we
can I-
want to be here a couple hours on this.
I don't either. I don't
I-
either.
I-
I just think if emergency
Let's
authorization.
leave
does
the
have to
date on
end,
because it coincides with the governor's letter.
But it doesn't say anything about the governor's letter in that motion.
The end
I
of
know.
the school year, Scott, maybe the end of the school year.
That's fine. Let's amend it to say that this authorization will expire at the end of the 2021, 2022 school year.
Mr. Chair, can I make a comment?
Yes, Superintendent.
All of these motions are done within the context of the authorization that's been given by the governor, the Senate president, the speaker of the House, and the state superintendent. And so those deadlines are automatically applied to these motions.
But it doesn't say that in our motion, so that's another way to amend it. We can say as authorized by the governor's letter, and then I think that provides that deadline. That's all. I'm not trying to be a stickler. I just think it has to
But
end if it's
Scott?
emergency authorization.
Board Member Hanson, why don't you
Yep.
propose an amendment here as
Okay,
you originally did with the
I'll
January
propose
28th?
another amendment then that just says that this emergency delegation of authority shall end at the termination of the authorization from the governor's letter, whatever that language is in the governor's letter.
Which is,
Shall
isn't it
terminate
January 28th?
when shall terminate when the governor's emergency authorization expires.
Okay, we have a proposed amendment.
Second?
Do we have a second?
Yes. Board Member
Okay,
Booth.
any discussion to the proposed amendment? I'm switching screens so I can read it. I'm trying to. We'll see how this works. To the proposed amendment, Member Hart,
I was just gonna say, repeat the line. No, I have nothing.
okay, the proposed amendment adds to original motion where the original motion stated, I move that the board instruct USDB to follow the decision of a local school district when the local school district where USDB students are located transitions from in-person to remote learning. Then the amendment that we're voting on adds, this emergency delegation of authority shall terminate at the expiration of the time in the governor's January 13, 2022 letter. I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. Board members at this time, please vote. This is on the amendment. The voting is complete and the amendment passes. So the amended motion, do I need to restate it? Is there any other questions on this motion? Seeing none, well, I'll restate the motion, then we'll vote. The motion is that the board instruct USDB to follow the decisions of a local school district when the local district school where USDB students are located transitions from in-person to remote learning. This emergency delegation of authority shall terminate at the expiration of the time the governor's January 13, 2022 letter. Board members at this time, please vote. Voting is complete and the motion passes unanimously. Vice Chair Belknap.
Thank you. The third motion on the board is, I move that the board delegate to board leadership the authority to approve a request from USDB to allow a program on any of USDB's campuses, Ogden, Salt Lake, or Springville, to transition from in-person to remote learning up to 4 days and under the conditions outlined in the January 13th, 2022 letter from the governor's office. The triggering event for USDB to make this request is the risk of insufficient staff on any of these USDB campuses related to the spread of COVID-19 among students and/or staff. This emergency delegation of authority shall end January 28th.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. Member Booth.
Okay, you want to speak to the motion, Vice Chair Belknap?
Yes, just for clarity, this gives a little bit of nimbleness with guidance, and for also that board leadership would immediately let the board know that this is happening. And the reason we put transition programs is because sometimes you'll have two different programs near each other, but not within reach of the COVID or other illnesses. The other reason staff is on here is because sometimes they don't have enough staff to cover their classes, and they're very specialized staff. And even using all of their staff, they still can't teach these students in their classrooms. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, discussion to the motion, Member Earl.
I just want to make sure this one sentence is correct, and it may be the triggering event for USDB to make this request is the risk of insufficient staff on any of these campuses related to the spread of COVID. And then we say among students and or staff. So insufficient staff because of students. I guess I'm just trying to make sure that the sentence actually works. Does that make sense?
I'm going to reread it here.
I agree with Miss Jenny. It probably needs to say triggering event for USB. This request is for insufficient staff or test to stay protocols. What do you think, Brian?
Or just
Could you help me
COVID
there?
protocols?
Any of those, I think are fine. You want to state the language that we need to add? I'll type it in.
How about or COVID protocols related to students or staff? So after staff, I'm just thinking insufficient
Or,
staff.
Not where
Or,
it's highlighted, Brian. Insufficient staff, the line above,
Right.
or
COVID, I don't know, COVID
Let's take a
protocol.
minute to
Threshold.
look at it one more
Okay,
time and then,
Oh, one more time.
Chair Husband, I don't have the ability to raise my hand while sharing screen. Do you mind if I speak?
yeah, go ahead.
So I think the language was trying to mirror what is actually in the allowance of the letter. So you could just put a period after COVID-19
okay,
because the letter is in relation to that event and there's some guardrails around it. So you could just say triggering event for USDB to make this request is the risk of insufficient staff on any of these USDB campuses related to the spread of COVID-19. Might not be the right order, but I think that's enough content.
but it's not just staff.
it could be the student, right?
It could be
Meeting
students as well.
the student, yeah, threshold or whatever.
So you could change the risk then, if it's about the spread or if it's about insufficient staff. I just think we've got it kind of muddled in there. You're absolutely right. They're kind of two different risks, not enough staff and then the
Yeah.
risk of spread.
All right, cool.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah,
now.
that makes more, thank you for that catch.
Thank you.
We had it in our brain, but didn't do it clear as we read this out. Member Hart,
I'm trying to think, it has to do with that sentence. I don't know, it's kind of splitting hairs, but it may not. I think that the event is the threshold that triggers test to stay and the inability to do test to stay. So I think it's more specific and more accurate to say the risk of insufficient staff or, well, I guess maybe it's fine. At first, my concern was that insufficient staff could be this other virus that's, we don't need a COVID positive to be without staff in this situation either. So I was just, but I'm taking my hand up.
yeah, it's all staying within the guidelines of the governor's letter.
I'm good.
Member Norton. Oh, you're muted.
I just have a question about the, it's not even a suggestion, it's just a question about the campuses. For instance, if there was a problem at Mill Creek, does this mean that they would be closing all the campuses down? Where it says on any of the USDB campuses?
The second motion made addresses Mill Creek. Is that correct, Superintendent Coleman?
Yes, and the wording just allows you to approve a request, no matter what that is. We would not request multiple campuses if we only had a problem on one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good question. Let me restate the motion. And then, well, let me restate the motion and we'll vote. The motion before the board is that the board delegate to board leadership the authority to approve a request from USDB to allow a program of any of USDB's campuses, Ogden, Salt Lake, or Springville, to transition from in-person to remote learning up to 4 days and under the conditions outlined in the January 13th, 2022 letter from the governor's office. The triggering event for USDB to make this request is the risk of insufficient staff or the spread of COVID-19 on any of these USDB campuses. This emergency delegation of authority shall end on January 28th. Board members at this time, please vote. The voting is complete and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I make one quick comment before we wrap it up?
You bet. Superintendent
Thank you.
Coleman.
Yeah, board members, I was notified that one of my comments earlier today was a matter of concern for several board members, where I informed you that we shut down one of our programs in Salt Lake for 3 days this week. I just wanted to let you know that we did that before this letter came out with these instructions and limitations. We did it the way we would have done on a snow day, and because of the necessity of not being able to have enough staff there. And so I hope that didn't alarm any of you, and I apologize if I did that. In the future, of course, going forward, now we know what to do. So thank you for your support.
Okay. And thank you, board members, for staying longer today and being a part of this emergency meeting. And thanks to staff and Superintendent Coleman and your staff for bringing the concern to our attention and also working on the proposed motions. I know compliance to the state's really important, and also the transparency, and that's for over our parents and stakeholders is important also. So thank you for your actions, quick actions today. This concludes our emergency meeting. Again, thank you and take care, and we'll keep you posted on the activities of hopefully there's not a lot to keep you posted on in this space of the motions that you have passed today, but we'll do that as this rolls out. Thank you. Take care and be safe and have an awesome week.